But it's more than that. It should be about the quest for knowledge and learning and all those things that we chisel on our buildings, on our campuses. And so the aspiration, I hope that we continue to literally carry the metaphor, reach for the stars and do that. But let's find creative ways to find the money to make that happen.
We've been talking primarily about universities. I think we ought to bring two-year institutions into the conversation. All of you know that most of our college entering students start off in two-year institutions. Most of them aspire to transfer to a university, and I know that I've never talked to a member of the legislature on the subject of community colleges who hasn't said, I have all these constituents who complain that their kids transfer from community college X to university Y and they lost 24 hours of credit. What's percolating in the legislature regarding this issue of transferability and moving in the direction of making certain that students do not lose not just credits, but applicable credits to a degree in the process of moving from a 2 to 4-year institution?
Absolute paramount importance, and we owe it to people because all those hours cost money, and the coordinating board's been working on alignment really intensively over the last few years, and it's been very valuable, and it's absolutely essential. I just had a young person who graduated from high school somewhere in the Panhandle and was going to go to work at OU, and was going to go to the University at OU, and found out a full semester didn't transfer. Here's where counseling, I think, is of its primary importance, that counselors need to prepare young people for exactly what they need to prepare to do. And if you want to be an engineering major at A&M, that student ought to know exactly what he needs to take and what the performance level needs to be before he graduates from high school in terms of math, science, and physics and things like that. The universities need to be very explicit in terms of what they're going to require of their students. And then community colleges need to perform in that alignment, and it should be somewhat more seamless. It's a real challenge to do, but it's absolutely important if community colleges are going to meet their sort of maximum value to the student, that they truly are the conduit to the university. And there's a lot of folks working at it really hard, and I think that's good, but it's an absolute priority. We shouldn't waste anybody's time or money taking courses that aren't going to transfer. At the same time, somebody's got to inform those young people what is going to transfer and how.
Any other views on this?
I just think the most probably delightful conversations that we are having now that I didn't see 10 years ago was that we really want the, after high school, we want the appropriate education. One size doesn't fit all. There are different people that have different skills and have different dreams and different talents, and they're short on other skills. So I explain to people, like, if the University of North Texas has that wonderful music school, well, if you dumped me in that music school and said, Myra, try really hard, I would never get off the ground. You know, I can't read music, I don't have a beautiful voice, and the competition that you're with, it's no fun to try to do something and spend a lot of money on something that it's just not where you're supposed to be. So we want to find the appropriate. I think it's a really degrading thing to tell somebody to try really hard when that's not where they're supposed to be. So I think we've gotten so much smarter about that, and we have much better conversation about the appropriate education past high school for each student. So, and it's very, you know, we are producing a product. It's a wonderful learning experience. It's a time to grow up, but you also want to come out job ready, and that's what the state of Texas needs.
Well, and I think, Raymond, the coordinating board can continue its help to ask every community college to negotiate an articulation with every university they might possibly go to the spider web of relationships. There needs to be a certain commonality of certain programs that are going to lead to the degrees, because, you know, we're asking our counselors a lot to know, well, what will they take at this school, and will that, you know, English 1301 count, or did 1302 count? We need to have some standardization of that, recognizing, you know, academic freedom and the ability of a school to say, okay, if you're going to be a geology major at our school, you'll need to take our, Earth Science 1 or whatever that is. We recognize that, but we need to find ways to make it a little easier for students. And I'd like to say their parents, but oftentimes the students don't have a parent at their side guiding them through this. It's really kind of challenging for them, a little bit daunting.
Any comments from Clardy?
No, I just think that the community colleges do offer, it's a great resource, it's a great stepping stone for many people, and not to jump into a meeting into a four-year institution, and maybe not go from a meeting into a community college, maybe go to the military, go to work, other things. I think one of the problems, backtracking on some of the student debt issues we have, is they've started in the wrong place at the wrong time in their particular level of maturity, and they dig themselves into a personal financial hole without the kind of guidance and counseling that they need. Community colleges offer, I think, really a less expensive opportunity to get your feet underneath you as an undergraduate student, identify those aptitudes or skills that you may have that can lead to a valuable vocational technical degree, maybe preferred working from 3 to 4 year degree later. So, I think it's a great resource. Texas probably has the best community college network in the state of the union. I think it fits what we're doing now as we tie it back into public education with what Chairman Aycock led us through last session, House Bill 5, is we go back farther, not just as freshmen in college or seniors in high school, back into the 8th to 6th grades. And again, let's find those aptitudes that our students are good at and help them become great. Let's don't focus so much on finding what they're mediocre at or bad at and try to make them mediocre. And so let's shift the paradigm of education about what it's about, and then we can move them forward. And the community colleges think that we're going to be vital in that role.
As you all know, the community colleges have been petitioning the legislature for several sessions to offer a wider range of baccalaureate degrees. In last session, Senate Bill 214 required, charged the coordinating board with doing a study of the feasibility of this idea. And the coordinating board did. It also required to make a recommendation regarding this issue, and we did. And I was wondering how you believe the legislature will address this issue. Do you have any views on this issue? There are obviously concerns about competition between universities and community colleges, or other arguments on the other side suggest community colleges can deliver baccalaureate degrees at a lower cost than universities do. How do you feel about this issue? Where are we going on this issue?
I'll jump in. I do think we'll see that expanded. We will have some additional baccalaureate degrees offered from certain community colleges. I think the experience around the country has been that has not been an explosion of community colleges looking to establish additional four-year degrees and supplant or step into the space of the traditional four-year institutions. I really think that it's a better use of our resources. I'm going to use probably the most frequently talked about baccalaureate degrees of BSN, a degree in nursing. Several of our community colleges are very well equipped, both in terms of faculty and facilities, to offer that degree efficiently. You get back to value, bang for the student's buck, that gets someone who can graduate with a degree that's in appropriate certification to enter the workforce at the right level. So I don't see that we're going to have a headlong rush of community colleges trying to usurp the role of the institutions. I know that's a concern to some. I think there will be very tailored programs at particular institutions, and they will move very carefully into that space because what they don't want to do, what none of us want them to do, is get ahead of themselves and have the current programs work well, be lost, it collapses under its own weight because they grow too quickly into too many different areas. So let's keep an eye on the job. What's their core mission? But if it can be something that's complementary to your core mission of your community college and complementary, I think it's a good thing.
Well, and there's another side to that, which is, in many programs, the demand far outstrips the supply of spots. And so it's not as if someone's going to take away from college X by letting another college offer a program. There's more than enough students to serve each of those if that's their desire. So I think that's kind of something that needs to be put in evidence. And maybe time will change, it'll be different, but all programs have to come through the coordinating board for approval. So I don't think that board would allow someone trammling growth. And there may be programs in certain areas and in certain disciplines that make sense to offer that kind of a program. I mean, one of the things we hear from employers all the time is we need more trained people in certain disciplines, nursing being one of those. And I wouldn't want to see our economy crash because we're trying to fit everybody through too small of a pipeline.
Any other comments on this issue?
No, I think it's interesting conversation just to have about the pluses and the minuses and what you want to be careful of. But absolutely, I think it's the job ready. The organizations that are going to win are the ones that are the most in tune with our businesses and what they need and what they need more of. And we're quite behind on nurses and all sorts of things. So I think that should be the driver if we have an expansion.
And I think it's a good point, because I've heard the argument that we've got plenty of nurses, they're just not all in the right places where we need them. I think this ought to be a discussion that we pursue very, very carefully, because we shouldn't lose sight of what the mission of the community college is, and we must not undermine it. I would submit to you that the registered nurses that are coming out of the community college are wonderfully prepared for the clinical surrounding and do a good job. At the same time, we want universities and colleges to do the best they can and attract the best students, but there are some community colleges that should not be eligible for a variety of reasons. Their proximity to four-year programs and the way they may dilute that, drive up the cost of faculty. The cost of faculty in a BSN program as opposed to an RN program, once again, addressing the cost of that college education. There are no real simple answers. Questions aren't simple either. And so there is a bill in the Senate authored by Senator Ellis, and we should view it very respectfully, but be very careful. We had a proposal, I forget from the group, that said community colleges should be allowed to put as many bachelor's programs in as they want to. I'm absolutely diametrically opposed to that. I think it undermines the mission, and at some point inevitably somebody's going to say, I have X number of bachelor's programs, I'm now a university, I want to be in formula funding, and I want to be eligible for TRBs. That's not what community colleges are for. That community college role is absolutely essential in the state of Texas and must be preserved. Other than that, I have no opinion.
We touched on some needs in health-related professions. Here's a question that we're very concerned about at the coordinating board, and all the members I've spoken to about this issue are concerned as well. We know that we have shortages of physicians in certain fields and certain regions of the state. And we have two university-based schools of medicine about to begin their initial operations. The University of Texas in Austin. Anybody who's driven through the central part of Austin has experienced what's going on there. And the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. We will have when we complete those university-based medical centers or medical schools, we will have more we will have more medical schools in California. And the question arises, what is the best way to move forward? Should we focus on building more medical schools, or should we focus on building more graduate medical education slots?
I know I certainly have an opinion on this one.
I want to hear it.
Held as deeply as Senator Seliger, and that is, it was exactly the right thing to do, particularly in the Rio Grande Valley. I think that was an important step for South Texas, and we will reap the benefits of that for generations to come. But right now, what I think we have to address is not so much additional medical school space and more classroom seats in the medical schools. We've got to solve the problem of creating residency and clinical spots and rotations for the students as they come into the third and fourth years of medical school. And we can do that, but we've got to be creative about it. Right now, this was one of our interim committees I served on between the sessions. We have a brain drain we spend all this money to pay for public education, for public universities, into our medical schools, and they go out of state to complete their clinicals or the residency programs, they don't come home. We need to create more clinical residency opportunities than we have medical student space. We need to be an importer of, again, those best and brightest. We know our state's growing faster, I think, than any other state. Where our population continues to grow, we're going to need more medicine, not less medicine. An aging population, all of those things. So how do we do it? And I think we need to look at some non-traditional ways. Typically, they've been done at teaching hospitals, which is appropriate. That still will remain the core of those clinicals and residencies. But I would like to see us in those underserved areas of the state, those urban areas that do not have the adequate medical attention, and in rural Texas that I represent, that we try to have some opportunities for clinicals, residencies, and rotations. As for instance, the state hospital in Rusk. I can't imagine a better environment if you're doing a psychiatric rotation to serve and do a period of time in the city of Rusk at that state hospital. You're going to see more and more, learn more there. But go in some of our larger regional hospitals and have that experience. There's fine doctors. We have to work on how you supervise and manage that. But we can do that. So to me, that has to be the focus.
The point of medical training is to create physicians in the state that's paying the bills. And I think that you all developed the proportion that we should have 1.1 or 1.2 GME slots for every medical school graduate. If we don't, we're wasting money. Young people are about 70% likely to live and work in the area in which they've trained. And if we don't have those GME slots, we'll turn out very, very talented graduates in any of our schools. And so they have to go for residencies in Oklahoma or Louisiana or New York and Pennsylvania, and that is where they've lived. And if what we're doing is producing physicians for these other states, we're wasting money. And so right now, the first question I asked about the Valley and the Dell Medical Center, how many GME slots? And if those GME slots aren't there, then really you're missing the point of having those institutions of medical training. It's the focus, and Travis is right. That's what we need to focus on. We'll get medical school graduates. The point is to keep them here. I also think that if you happen to produce enough medical school graduates, you will increase the gravity for teaching in underserved areas. We've done that in debt retirement for physicians if they'll serve in underserved areas for certain periods of time. At the RAC in the Valley and places like that, which is a non-medical school but a teaching surrounding, doing a great job in teaching and giving us experience, the GMEs are absolutely critical.
On appropriations, we have been taught and retaught and retaught year after year about the value of GMEs. And so every new generation that comes into the appropriations committee, but there hasn't been, and so that's why we talk, there hasn't been the money, or we haven't had the political will. And that's why I talk about this session being the opportunity session to do some of those things we wished we could have done 2 sessions ago, 3 sessions ago, 4 sessions ago, and now this is an opportunity session where there is some money to use, but it's so important that we use it wisely, because this may be a one-time session where there is a little breathing room.
Raymond, I know you're trying to get us to wrap up, but I just want to add to the notion, certainly support the GME idea, but I just want to encourage us to be pretty granular. Not all spots are equal. Not all are equally applied for. And we need to be smart about what disciplines and specialties we want here, where we want them. We have a great opportunity to attract, some more than others. And I've heard people say, well, let's reserve spots for students from Texas. I say, no, I want the best and brightest. I want those, whether it's a neonatal or whatever that discipline is. There are certain ones that we're really lacking, and particularly if you apply the geographic access to it as well. And so I think we can really help ourselves in a couple of ways with kind of a surgical strike on this.
If I can add a point here, there is a Medicaid cap to GME slots in hospitals. And beyond that, the federal government doesn't reimburse. And so at this point, would our money be better spent creating more medical school spots or augmenting that funding in hospitals to go above the Medicaid cap for those GME slots? You're right, this is not a bias toward, I don't care who fills the GME slots. whether they're from Harvard or from Baylor Medical School. The point is to have the GME slots, because we'll hold some of those doctors.
And I probably should have said when I invoked California as a comparison state, I didn't mean to suggest California represents the ideal, but only because California has 40% more people than Texas. So, anyway, we have time for one final question, and it'll be brief, and it's probably a question that you anticipated. Where do you think we're going to go with outcomes-based funding for universities?
We'll do the McLaughlin report. I'll say yes, but you know, every university is going on a different measure. Right? And the devil's going to be in the details on this. And you know, the mission of UT, say versus U of H, very different. But I do think they need to come to us and say, here's what I can live with, here's what I want to be graded on, here's what I'm going to strive towards, and we tie a portion of funding to that. So.
I think the latest iteration of outcomes-based funding for universities addresses that issue adequately.
And I think there's been a lot of work done, and you've led on this with the stakeholder institutions. I think we're working towards it. They're coming up with a good workable bill in that regard, and I expect we'll see it pass at least. They can move through the House, but again, I think it's something that we'll see. The governor, I think you would like to see a bill like that on his desk. So I think we can come to an agreement on that.
Well, whether we do or not, I think it's a wonderful conversation that we have, and whether we have outcomes-based funding or not, the things that would move you to a quicker graduation rate, it's just a no-brainer. And all those things that we have talked about, it's been a great conversation. When my oldest son was accepted at a major university here in Texas, we got a letter from the president of the university said, now remember that your son or daughter may not graduate in 4 years. And our hair went on fire because that's what we were paying for. So it's a wonderful conversation. We are absolutely moving in the right direction, and I thank you for bringing this up and pressing it.
I think it's a worthwhile discussion, but we're going to settle on a model. Is it going to be a punitive one that looks at outcomes and based on existing funding, or is it incentivized for new funding? But if we put in new funding and people qualify, or institutions qualify in next year, what if we don't have the money in the general fund the next time for the existing incentive that we've offered? So it's got to be done very carefully, both from a policy point of view and a fiscal point of view.
I want to thank our guests, our members of the legislature for their thoughtful comments on higher education. I think we'll have a lively discussion about these issues over the next few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you.